Mike, you're on mute.
How's that?
There we go.
Sorry. Chairman Mike McCoo calling to order the regular Board of Finance meeting of June 16th, 2022 at 7:06 p.m. Christina is expecting to be late, so I make a motion at her request we seat Lisa Wolf in her place.
So moved.
I have a motion, and can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. Samantha, you ready to call votes?
Yep. Okay, Elizabeth? Or I'm sorry, Elizabeth wouldn't vote, would she?
Not yet.
Okay, sorry about that. Stephanie?
Yes.
And Peter?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
And Mike?
Yes.
Do I have to
Okay.
ask Jim too, or that was everybody?
That's everybody.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay. So present to speak, public participation is desired and encouraged. Speak to time and appropriateness of comments to maintain progress, stay on topic, and maintain decorum. Anyone who is present to speak, feel free to wave your hand if you're in video. Ralph Toulis.
Hi, Mike. Good evening. I was just curious when the minutes of the various 2022 meetings would be posted, because I can only find January 27.
We were missing a few. I had gotten a link previously from Kelsey when she was doing our minutes. And, couldn't find that link, or it wasn't live anymore, and she resent it to me today. I tried to get it yesterday so we could get them posted 24 hours in advance, but she was in a conference yesterday. So I got the link this afternoon. I will get them to the town clerk and get them out, and then we'll vote them in the next meeting. But they'll be out in public by tomorrow.
Okay. Thank
I
you.
apologize for that. In the transition between secretaries, we somehow that got left off and we had to track it down.
Okay.
Any other present to speak? Okay, moving on to old business. Budget status, financial report. I'll do a screen share since the report just came in this afternoon for May. Just bear with me a moment. Okay. All right, I think that's working. Okay. This is the report from Donna, typical report we've been getting. And this is, if I can center it. There you go. I will just, there are a couple of notes on the bottom here we just want to make note of as we're looking at this. Revenue is expected to be more than budgeted. Favorable collection on taxes. Town clerk conveyance fees and building permits will offset a shortfall in investment income. We will receive a municipal grant and aid of $20,000 from the state in June. And notes on the expenditure side. There are some overspent items here. Department 0133 auditor overspent by $1,000. Department 0311 public works snow budget overspent by $61,000. Tree removal overspent by $12,480. Overspent lines were offset by budgetary savings across other lines in public works. Department 185 senior center tracking to overspend by $8,000 due to unanticipated repair of the fire alarm system, maintenance, and heating oil. Collective bargaining agreement finalized April 26th, 2022 with a 2.2% wage increase for the current year for employees and elected officials. Salary increases included in the budget. However, transfers are needed to true up the salary accounts. Just a note from me that will come later in the meeting. All right, so thinking about those notes and looking at the May report. Any comments or questions from the board? The other thing to keep in mind too, since we got this afternoon, is you can certainly, if we have questions afterwards, email me a question, we can send it to Donna.
So, well, I guess the only question I would have is, this is 10 months in, 11 months in?
It's through May, so it's essentially 11 months.
Yeah.
Yep.
So is there anything there that's of concern, given that we're, pretty near tying up this fiscal year? I mean, I know, of course, the shortfall in projected investment income in the budget, but because of the, it seems like that's a non-issue on the bottom line. But I'm just wondering, is there anything else from Donna or Erica that we should know about that's going to slam us in the last period, or the cleanup after the budget closes?
So I will defer to Donna to answer that question. I do know that typically in this last month, we don't usually have big surprises, but the nature of a surprise is we don't know what's coming, right? But typically this time of year, Donna is able to get us pretty close to the numbers. And of course, we won't have exact numbers until all accounts are closed, in July or August. But usually we've been running fairly true on this 11-month predictor. So Donna, do you have any comments to add on that?
I don't. I'm pleased with the revenue situation and pleased that the permit fees are double what we budgeted, and that's going to help us out.
Okay. Well, I'm proud to say that I've helped contribute to those building permit fees.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna stop the screen share. Okay, anything else on budget status, financial report? I know that we are watching a lot of different things, we all watch things at the national level, the state level. The state, fortunately, is in a strong surplus situation right now. There seems to be debate on what should be done with that. But it isn't likely to hurt us. Maybe it'll even help us. So I figure that's a good sign. Certainly, we have a lot of economic distress right now, stressing factors overall. So we'll have to be, as we have been, we'll have to be prudent going into this next budget year, seeing how it's affecting things, if there are more cost overruns or unexpected changes in our budget status. It does concern me a little bit. On the other hand, I think we're somewhat combat ready, what we've been through the last 2 or 3 budget cycles. So let's just keep our eye on things. Anything else on that agenda item? All right, let's go to school building committee representative, which is me. The building committee meeting for this week was canceled. There is activity on some of the subcommittees. And there is activity in curriculum, I'm sorry, not curriculum, the educational specification coming from Board of Ed to the public and to the committee, which helps define the actual programmatic needs of a new space, whether it's renovated or a new building. So there are a lot of things going on. The cancellation of the meeting shouldn't be interpreted as no activity, just that there were not activities ready to report at a meeting. Any questions on that before I move on? All right. Moving on to ARPA update. I was hoping Christina would make it back by this point, but I'll screen share in a second here her emailed report, which all of you should have. As soon as I find it. Stand by. Okay, I'm going to screen share it if I do this right. Okay. Can you all see that email right there? ARPA Commission update from Christina? Someone give me a wave or a thumbs up or something. Thank you, Stephanie. Okay. I'll read it out loud for those who don't have the benefit of video. Dear Chairman McCoo, please accept this progress report of the ARPA Commission and share with the Board of Finance for the June 16th meeting. Since the last Board of Finance meeting, there's been a flurry of ARPA activity. On May 24th, 22, a public hearing on several requests was held and the following were subsequently approved for funding. Selectmen ARPA 13, devices for town staff and senior center, $38,460.30. Human Services ARPA 21, fuel bank and home heating oil expenses, $25,000. Human Services and Parks and Rec ARPA 23, summer camp supplement, $36,000. Conservation Commission ARPA 26, forestry plan for Mason Road tracts, $2,800. Conservation Commission ARPA 27, building materials for park structure maintenance, $3,500. ARPA Commission ARPA 29, ARPA public hearing expenses, formerly ARPA 28, $2,000. The only project that was tabled at the requester's request and not approved was ARPA 28 Senior Center Tech Upgrade for $2,441.07. The last regular meeting of the ARPA Commission was on Monday, June 6th, 2022, I think that's supposed to say. At that meeting, a decision was made to move several projects onto a public hearing, and that meeting is slated to be held July 11th in the evening. There is another regular meeting, which is technically a special meeting because it could not be held on the third Monday of the month. In the meantime, on June 27th. So just for clarity, there's one more meeting on the 27th, which could add more information to the July 11th hearing. To date, $1,172,417 of the total amount has been appropriated. 3 projects have been officially closed and all were under budget. So $20,945.06 has been freed up to allocate elsewhere. We expect several other projects to come in under budget in the coming months. $583,982.28 remains to be appropriated. Anyone with an interest in any of the following projects is encouraged to come to the public hearing on July 11th and we'll have a chance for input. To date, the 4 projects that are going to public hearing totaling $225,229 are ARPA 17 and 18, Wellington Parks and Rec Commission requesting drainage and lighting at River Road Athletic Complex, $196,979. ARPA 20, Wellington Hill Fire Department requesting new furnace, $20,000. ARPA 32, Board of Selectmen requesting employee retention bonuses, $32,250. ARPA 34, Department of Public Works requesting a storage box for evictions, $6,000. Note, more items may be added after the June 27th meeting. There are several projects that are new or tabled that will be discussed at the next regular meeting. They are ARPA 30. Hang on a second. Wellington Housing Authority emergency generator and call for service system at Button Hill Senior Housing, $200,000. ARPA 31, Wellington Historical Society archival storage, $10,000. ARPA 33, flags, grave markers, and monument repairs, $6,500. ARPA 35, community cares project, $6,000. ARPA 36, Wellington Fire Department #1 employee retention bonuses, $17,000. ARPA 37, Department of Public Works, 2022 John Deere skid steer, $68,000. We have heard that there may be other requests coming, including traffic cameras and miscellaneous projects at the library. Also, the Economic Development Commission is accepting applications for the BRIG program up to the end of June. They will then assess all the requests that have been submitted. And then there's a sort of graphical representation of the total funds, $1.735,454.22. Total funds appropriated so far, $1.172,417. Remaining $563,037.22. Returned $20,945.06. Those together equal up $583,982.28. Total new or tabled requests. This is an important number here, $779,420.07. Total remaining, if all requests are funded, that's a negative $195,437.79. In other words, there are more requests than dollars right now, and there are more requests coming in. As she noted, and I do know that since her report, some of those other things have been submitted. So if you look on the ARPA, if you go on the town website and look at the ARPA stuff, you will see more since this report was written. Again, respectfully submitted, Christina Milos, Board of Finance delegate to the ARPA Commission, and lucky her, ARPA Commission Chair. Any questions or comments on Christina's report? Stephanie, you're muted.
I just wanted to ask a couple questions just to clarify basic stuff. What are the, in number one under, these 6 projects that were dealt with in public hearing on 5/24? Are those, what kind of devices are those for town staff and senior center? Is that,
Honestly, I don't remember. I don't know if anyone else here remembers what they are. I'd have to look it up.
Mike, this is Erica. Are you comfortable with me responding to that?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, so that project is 3 parts. One is a refresh of the network closet that's downstairs in the meeting room. It includes some upgrades to that. And I apologize, I don't have that numbers in front of me. That's about $2,200. The second part is some wireless upgrades to the building. We have significant issues with wireless capabilities, and that includes being able to use devices in our meeting rooms now. And that originally projected was close to about $9,000. The remainder is devices for town staff. And so that would give them, it's a new computer, which would be a laptop with a docking station. So it would be replacing a desktop, so that in the event staff needed to work remotely due to pandemic related issues or anything else, they could then take that device with them. And so that's for devices, and then the docking stations and monitors that are compatible with that system. Several of our departments have upgraded in the last year, and they're using that particular system. That's what's been recommended by our IT, instead of having every individual with 2 devices, because the likelihood of us having to take our show on the road is less likely. There are many things we can't do remotely, but if we needed to, everyone would have 1 device, and we wouldn't need to maintain 2 devices per employee.
Thank you, Erica.
And then I was wondering about building materials for park structure maintenance, 3,500 to conservation. Is that, what is the structure?
I think some of that was, as I remember, was for the Ruby, for the Fent Ruby.
Right, okay,
And it was simply like building materials for some of the wooden structures there, like the signboard and benches and guardrails, things like that. Just the basic infrastructure that's there now.
okay. And then the other question I had was, well, I wondered what for Public Works, what a skid steer is.
It's a kind of loader. It's a smaller, it's not like a big payloader. It's a smaller loader. Like the one, you might think of it as a Bobcat. Some people call it a Bobcat.
Thanks. And the last one was the project above that, Willington One, employee retention bonuses. Are they town employees, the ones that we're talking about?
They are not.
Yeah, if you look at the list, if you look in the request, you'll see it lists, it's fire department employees and officers. I think I think they call it fire department staff and fire department officers.
Yeah, and Erica said they are not town employees, though.
Correct.
They are not. And the ARPA Commission has not heard that request yet. So there's a handful of those requests that have yet to go before the commission, but have been input.
Okay, thanks, Erica.
You're welcome.
Any other board member comments, questions on the report? And then we have the continuing agenda item here, or I continue this into the agenda item. It's unfortunate Christina is not here because she asked to give us a little time to kind of discuss it in depth. For those who have been following ARPA, there were some concerns about having the right process to approve the bonuses because many of the voting members of the ARPA Commission are also town employees in a manner that they would be on the list to be eligible for bonuses. So if you look at the request that's in there for town employee bonuses, there was a question on how to do it. There was some really good discussion at one of the meetings about how to do the process and avoid conflict of interest. It's a little challenging, but it is moved on to, go to the public hearing for that discussion.
Mike, is there any way we could adjust the place on the agenda for this, so that she can explain what issues?
Yeah, we can table it until later in this meeting in case we can table it until she returns, either to this meeting or the next meeting.
I move that we do that. I think it's.
Second.
Okay. Samantha, can you call a vote on tabling this agenda item? Hang on, I want to just get my agenda back in front of me here. Changing screens again. Okay, so the motion was to table old business 3B, process discussion.
Okay.
All right.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Mike.
Yes. Okay. Motion carries. So we'll move on now to new business, end of fiscal year transfers. Donna, do you want to do these in any particular order?
No, Mike, I'll leave it to you.
Okay.
There's 3 memos.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna dig them up right now. Let's see.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So the first one you sent me, Donna, was the CIP one. So I'm gonna go with that one first. Hang on. Stand by for screen sharing, everybody. Let's see if I can dig this one out of the background here. All right. Okay. So, There's money budgeted in the selectmen's budget, line 0930, for 3 CIP projects that will not be completed before the fiscal year ends on June 30th. You can see 41,500 for center school fire alarm, 60,500 for hall school fire alarm, and 35,000 for Village Hill drainage. We've done these before. This allows us to carry the money across a fiscal year. So as Don explained there, create a capital project for each one, transfer the funds out of the selectmen's budget, capital projects fund, and then there are 3 suggested motions. Any questions or comments before we move to motions?
Yeah, I just have a,
Okay.
Go ahead, Pete.
I have a quick question. Why didn't these get done?
I don't know. I can't answer on the Village Hill drainage project, but I believe Phil had commented that it was partially a timing issue on parts and the crew availability and trying to not do the fire alarm panels during the school year because they would have to shut them down while the building was occupied.
Okay.
So that's items 1 and 2. I don't know about the Village Hill drainage project. Erica, you don't have any information on that, do you?
I absolutely do. This was a project that Public Works had hoped to start last summer. I think you're all aware of the impact we had from rain last summer and other road damage that consumed our time. And so they just have not had time to get to this project.
Okay. All righty. Any other comments in general before we go to the specific motions? All right. I will move that we transfer $41,500 from line 0930 capital expenditures to line 0503 capital projects for the Center Elementary School fire alarm project.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Is this money that instead of coming from CIP, given the amount that's in the non-reoccurring fund, could this be financed by the Board of Education without our use here? We can't tell them to do it.
Right.
If
So
we deny this, then that's the way it would get done, correct?
So technically they could, there's no legal reason they can't use, I believe, the non-lapsing fund for it. However, this is an approved project already approved by the taxpayers. So, you know, we're essentially just allowing the project to continue. It's been brought to the taxpayers and approved in the budget and in CIP.
Yeah, but if we think that things have changed, then we could change as things allow, correct?
If we did not pass this motion, then the money would have to get returned into the general budget at the end of this fiscal year. It would kill the project, yes.
All right.
Any other discussion on the motion?
Just to Peter's point, I mean, in general, as a precedent, wouldn't that create a situation where we constantly maybe be discussing going back to the department benefiting from the project to finance it, even though it's been approved in capital money? That seems like a
the difference here, as I see it, Stephanie, is that no other department has a non-lapsing fund.
right, but the non-lapsing fund, I think, for their purposes, may be something other than the capital project.
Well, non-lapsing fund, as I understand it, is money returned because they didn't use it from a previous year and is now available for whatever project they need. And we can't tell them what those projects are.
Right, but they would not be spending it on capital projects. That's not their source for capital projects. Their source is CIP for that.
Well, part of the reason for the non-lapsing fund is that, as I understood it, because we're not paying for capital funds in the education budget because we didn't want to raise the minimum budget requirement. So we pay for it in capital rather than adding it to their budget, which would put it in the minimum budget requirement. So what this is doing is allowing them to use money taxpayer money that they've already been given for projects without raising that minimum budget requirement.
Right, but it's before their budget year even starts. I'm thinking for non-lapsing fund during budget year 2022 to 23, that presents a hardship. If anything comes up, they don't have any flex at all.
Well, what I was getting at is that this is $41,000. They've got about $200,000 in that account. They can keep a maximum of $250,000 in that account. This would actually give them more flexibility.
I'm not comfortable with the precedent you're describing.
Yeah, I think it's really two issues. One is, are we following through with the intent of the taxpayers who approved the budget? The other issue, which is related but is a separate issue, is if circumstances have changed, we have a process that might allow us to say, hey, there's a change, let's look at a new direction. So I think in this case, Pete's feeling that circumstances have changed some because there's the money in the non-lapsing fund, and we, each of us board members may agree or not agree with that, or we may think this is something that's been approved by the taxpayers already, and we're following a process to allow it to carry through. Or some of us may feel it's some of both of those things.
Yeah, I understand that. I think part of what I'm concerned about is they have the school budget, the capital school budget has already been affected by changing circumstances, in that we've incorporated the idea of doing an expensive renovation or school building that's going to start in the shorter term rather than the longer term, now that we're closer to it. They've already put in abeyance several projects that they were proposing for the next couple of years in CIP. So I'm concerned about doing that at this point, because there are a lot of things that are going unrepaired and unaddressed.
I think that's true. And I think there's also the situation where our capital process is telling people you should be running your capital projects through CIP.
Right.
Okay, any more discussion on the motion? Samantha, why don't you call the vote?
Okay. Stephanie,
Yes.
Pete,
No,
Jeff,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
and Mike.
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Next motion, I move that we transfer $62,500 from line 0930 capital expenditures to line 0503 capital projects for the purpose of the Hall Memorial School fire panel project.
Second.
Discussion. All right, Samantha, let's vote.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Pete,
yes,
Jeff,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes. Item 3, I move that we transfer $35,000 from line 0930 capital expenditures to line 0503 capital projects for the purpose of the Village Hill Drainage Project.
second,
Any discussion? All right, let's vote.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Peter,
yes,
Jeff,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Mike.
Yes. Motion carries. Stand by for another screen share. All right. Here we have a memo from Donna with suggested motions for the budget transfers for salary items. As you can see in the header description here, Donna has told us the salary account transfers are needed to true up the salary accounts for the 2.2% contract increase for current union, non-union, and compensated elected officials. Also, a retention bonus for the Director of Public Works. And I'm assuming this BOS 5222 means that's where these were approved.
Yes,
Okay, and the possibility for a bonus for some elected officials. And Donna, is that the,
Registrars.
what is the possibility for a bonus for some elected officials? What is that referring to?
that refers to if the Board of Selectmen acts on that, then there is money in the lines just in case.
Okay. So this is, in other words, this transfer is putting money in for a possible request that has not yet been approved by the Board of Selectmen.
Yes, that's exactly correct. So there is money in the Registrar of Voters line item for a bonus, just in case, just in case it comes to fruition.
Okay,
Are those the only one? The only ones would be the registrars?
Registrars, Treasurer, Board of Selectmen.
okay. So this, I guess this gives me a little bit of a process concern that we're being asked to do a transfer to approve money for an unknown, for something that we don't have in front of us.
Mike, could I add to that to an extent?
Yes.
Go down
Yes.
to the first page. I
Yep.
just overall, I mean, we just got this at 6:45, so I haven't had much time to digest it. But it seems to me to be missing quite a bit of detail, because it's basically, it's detail on the accounts as far as, you know, we're kind of separating, you know, when we've done other transfers, we say we want this much from this account for this to this
Yep.
account for this reason. We don't have the reasons or the amounts making up the reason in the motion. That makes me uncomfortable. We're basically saying transfer this total of 53 grand out of these accounts at these numbers and transfer them into these accounts without real detail as to what's going to what in those accounts that they're going to. This one that you got up here now doesn't bother. It's similar, but it's not as problematic, because, you know, overall they're saying we'll take it out of employee health insurance because we have a surplus and we'll put it toward two things. But in the previous one, the list where there's so much detail missing, I just feel like it needs a breakdown before we do these transfers. I mean, we're talking about everything from bonuses to, I don't know, you went away from the page, but
Right.
several things. Contract obligation for the very late, union contract process, and then, you know, other things. Some are like pay oriented, and other things
Right.
are for simpler reasons. I don't know. I'm concerned about it. I feel like we'd be voting on something that doesn't have the detail provided.
So, yeah, so why don't we, since the order we do these in is not critical, why don't we move to this next one here, since it's clearer and more specific, and knock a couple of these out? So I'll make a motion to transfer $8,000 from line 0831 employee health insurance.
Mike,
What?
I think it's 9,000.
Hang with me. You're right,
Okay.
but hang with me. I'm breaking
All
it
right.
down.
Oh, you're making it in two parts. Got it.
Yep. All right, so I'll start over. I move that we transfer $8,000 from line 0831 employee health insurance to line 0185 senior center.
Second,
Second.
Discussion? Samantha, call the vote, please.
Stephanie,
Yes,
Pete,
Yes,
Jeff,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Mike.
Yes. You know what, I think we have an overall problem here. I just realized that we didn't see Jim for Joe Sherrill.
Oh.
Right? That was a mistake, right?
correct. I move that we see Jim for Joe Corral.
Second. Any discussion? I
Why do you
guess,
do this in person?
Jim, you're with us still, right?
Yes, I am, Mike, and I have been following along if you need me to.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
vote
We,
in.
I missed that I had the request from Christina and then I just didn't even pay attention to that other one. I'm sorry. Okay, so
No,
let's vote on the seating of. Are we in the middle of another? No, we passed that motion.
Yep.
Okay, good. So let's vote on the motion to seat Jim for Joe.
Stephanie,
abstain.
what was that? I can't hear.
I'm abstaining.
Oh. Pete,
Yes,
Jeff. Was that a yes? You broke up a little bit.
That was a yes.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth
Yes. Yes.
and Mike.
Yes. Okay. So Jim, welcome aboard. Better late than never. I move.
yes, I'm here.
I move we transfer $1,000 from line 0831 to line 0133 auditor.
second,
Any discussion on the motion? All right, let's vote.
Stephanie,
Yes,
Peter,
yes,
Jeff,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes,
Mike.
Yes. Okay. So let me just see. I think, Donna, we have one more page besides this also, right?
This is the last page.
Oh, this is the last. Okay, that's right, because these two were in the same attachment. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so back to this discussion. Stephanie, I echo your concerns, not about the first two parts of this, but the approving money for a possible future something. Because I think to a certain extent, I feel like our approval of this motion tonight then basically says, well, the Board of Finance already approved this, but we don't actually know what we're approving. I mean, we know in theory what we're approving.
Mike,
Yes.
I'd like to move we table.
I'll second that motion. And we'll do it without, appreciate you doing it without a date so that we can reintroduce this as soon as possible. I'd like to,
Mike, may I speak,
Yeah.
may I speak to
Yes.
discussion?
yes,
Thank you. And I asked Donna to weigh in on this. I think I hear your concern, two of these three parts. One is contractual and the other was a vote by the Board of Selectmen. So the possible of the bonus would be for elected officials. The only two departments that would need a transfer here would be the registrars, simply because the other two departments potentially affected have enough money in their accounts. So when Donna and I had this discussion, she determined that it was better to have the funds there. If the question before the Board of Selectmen was not moved forward, that money would not be spent. It would simply be returned, and it would be returned out of the line item that you moved it to, as opposed to the, where it sits currently. So would not be spent if the Board of Selectmen took negative action. The intent was that those then, we have a meeting on Tuesday when we anticipate action in one direction or the other, and wanted to be sure by the end of the fiscal year, we had the adequate dollars for those potential concerns. Not unlike potential overspends we've had in the past. We've transferred, you all have approved transferring funds, and I'll use the legal field as one, and then we didn't end up needing all of the dollars, and it was returned to the general fund. It was just returned out of the legal fund where it had been transferred. So I believe, it would be prudent for this board to take action at minimum on the percentage increases that will be needed as a result of contract negotiations, and then that that retention bonus for the director that was approved by the Board of Selectmen. Thank you.
I agree with most of what you're saying, Erica, and I don't think there's any issue of trusting that the money would be returned if not needed. I don't question that at all. I think it's a process question of asking us to approve unknowns, and sort of, I guess what I'm questioning, again, as Stephanie said, it came to us late, so we're basically seeing it right now. Obviously, we do our business in the meeting anyway, but without some time to think it through, I'm concerned that we're abdicating, that we have the potential to abdicate our representation of the people in their budget authority by saying we're approving an unknown. And then if you don't use it, we'll get the money back. We don't question we'll get the money back, but to approve a department or a request for something that's a possibility is a little, what if the people or our representation of the people is, we don't like that idea, we're not sure it's a prudent expense of the taxpayer money. That takes away to say it when we don't have it in front of us.
I agree with that, Mike, and that's why I simply stated that only 4,000, not 2,000, 4,000 of the transfers from that are going into the elected officials is what I would recommend you leaving off. There's no transfers to account for the other elected officials. Their current budgets could sustain the proposed monies. And so, and I'll ask Donna to speak to why it would be prudent to, especially the contract amounts, to pay those out, because then we would have shortfalls in multiple departments when the last pay of the fiscal year goes out. There would not be money in those accounts. And so I would agree with you that I have no problem. This was on the recommendation of our finance director. Business manager. So if you removed a $4,000 transfer into, I think it's into the elected officials, and I would ask Donna to speak to that. If you remove that, that is the amount, and I'd let her speak to what that is. If you took those potential increases out and approved the rest of it.
Okay, Donna, you want to weigh in on?
Yes, I will weigh in on it. That would work. So in the two category, the first one, election officials, if you made it just $655, that would be what is needed to cover the retro pay for the 2.2% increase. The $4,000 was bonus, so you could take that off. But just so you have some detail, all of these accounts are salary accounts. Each one is a salary account. And the plan by design, when the budget was designed, was that all of the money for the salaries was in employee health insurance. And as it turned out, as we went through the year, there was some turnover in salaries, and there was some savings, so that we didn't need to get all of the money from employee health insurance. So if you see the last one in the from category we're only taking $5,000 from health insurance. And these other departments had turnover. And that is why there's money there that we can use to offset what we need in other departments.
Mhm.
So I know you like to have an exact match between the to and the from, but it's just too, it's just easier to net it all out and list, you know, like if everything went perfectly as we planned, everything would be, it'd be to all the departments and from health insurance.
Right. Yep, understood. I understand that. So if we were to adjust out the $4,000 in the two line 0126 election officials, we would
Yes,
adjust $4,000 out. Probably the easiest place would be at employee health insurance. Instead of transferring 5161, we
Yes.
would transfer 1161.
yes.
Okay.
And what does it mean to leave that balance in employee health insurance? Does that mean we're over budgeted in that line?
We budgeted more than we need.
So it will be returned to the
Yes,
balance? Okay.
yes,
And if the Board of Selectmen acts in the meantime, creates these bonuses, for example, and then asks us to act on them before the end of the fiscal year, we could potentially still act on it. If we approved it, then we would end up creating what we're looking at tonight. It just would happen in two separate meetings.
yes. Thank you, Mike. That sounds good.
We
I
have
see
some, do we have some
s-
comfort with
I see a
that?
typo in there. Just wanted you to make sure you
Okay.
saw it too.
Where
The
do you?
$57 where it says from should be to.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, yep, okay. All right, so to do this in a motion, this is gonna be a little creative. I guess we'll just have to list all the amounts from.
You know, before we get into the process, Mike, we have a motion to table this, right?
We do have a motion to table it,
And
yes.
I guess, and we haven't really opened that to the Board of Finance for discussion.
That's true, yes. Okay, so we started discussing the motion to table. Any more discussion and we'll vote to table. We'll vote on the motion to table.
I just want to clarify that I'd still like I still would like to see a breakdown of how the numbers match up. I'd just like to see the detail, the amounts that go, or what's going where, or to which positions.
So do you mean specific account numbers? So like in the selectmen line, it would be selectmen, first selectmen salaries. Treasurer is only one line item. An assessor would be assessor salary and assessor assistant. So you
Right.
want it broken down on how much of goes to each position. Because usually you only approve by department.
But-
Not by individual line items.
I think what I'd like, Mike,
Go ahead, Pete.
what I'd like to see is the way you moved the second page of this, one line one transfer at a time, so that we could separate them out, so that instead of just approving everything on the list, we could approve them one at a time. I think that would make me far more comfortable.
So I think the challenge here, is what Donna was explaining, is these don't line up, like.
Right. I
There's-
understand
Go
that.
ahead.
But what you could do is you could say 4,655 from selectmen to election officials, and then $23 from selectmen to Board of Appeals, and then you could have multiple line items so that we could vote on each item that we are sending money to individually.
But then we'd have to do a lot of math.
Yeah, well, I understand that. I'd rather have the math done and give us the ability to look at each line item than approaching all the line items as a group.
So I think the difficulty with that would be you would just have to randomly select where these dollars are coming out of.
Well, what we're doing is we're just adding up a bunch of income and then making the amount of outgo the same. I think that you'd have to break up, where the money's coming from into where it's going to. And even if it doesn't line up correctly, then you could use whatever the remainder was plus money from another line item. So you could have multiple line items from where the money's from, but only one line item on where the money's to.
Or in the inverse, the transfer to Public Works would be coming from more than one location because
That's correct. That's what I meant. I don't know if I conveyed that properly.
Yeah.
So the money
Okay.
to Public Works, I don't, where it's coming from, that's not as
Stephanie,
important.
Stephanie raising your hand?
I'm not as concerned about that because I see where they're truing up the math and, I'm more concerned about the detail of the content of what we're doing on the transfers as a matter of record. Because I think it's, there's competing things, like if there's the rate, like take the Public Works director. There's a retention bonus, which, he actually left and is coming back and came back. And so there's that. Then there's the union contract, right? Well, that's different. That doesn't apply to him, but there's a union contract that applies to others. It's just like kind of confusing about what it is that we're doing exactly. And I know that some of this is in the board that has been approved, or this has all been approved except for the one thing you mentioned by the Board of Selectmen. But take those numbers from those approvals with the detail and tell us, like what Donna was starting to articulate to me, is do it by the positions in the department, because otherwise it's just vague, and it's only trued up in terms of sums, not in terms of the values of the transfers, what we're doing in those transfers. And I think for public reasons, for transparency, and for understanding what all this is that we're going to be doing with a significant amount of money is something that we should do for the record.
Okay, so based on that comment so far, if we vote in the affirmative to table, then we would have to issue some sort of request or instructions or whatever of what we need for further information to get it off the table and onto the floor again. And if we vote not to table it, then we could potentially parse out the $4,000 as discussed, but there's no mechanism for us to get the granular detail tonight. It wouldn't be possible for us to get the level of detail for your concerns or Pete's concerns in the meeting tonight. So I think
I don't think it would be probably not for tonight, but it's
right.
The second group of figures, the two,
right.
It needs to be broken down.
Yeah.
What is it? Yeah.
Okay, so any other comments, discussion on the motion to table? I'm just making sure I'm seeing all the board members here. It looks like, by the way, hi, Christina. I saw you pop up before. I'm assuming you're catching up with us. Okay. Okay, I'm seeing no more discussion on the motion to table. Samantha, can you call the vote, please?
Yep. Stephanie,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
since Christina's here, do I still ask Elizabeth?
No, you go to Christina.
Okay, Christina,
I'm gonna have to abstain because I missed a lot of it. I'm kind of lost.
Yeah, sorry to throw you in the middle of it. It's just the
No,
procedure
it's-
says once you arrive at the meeting, you automatically take your seat. So,
It's okay. Okay.
Jeff,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Mike,
yes. Okay, so we need to, well, since we've tabled it, we need to kind of let Erica and Donna know what we need to move it forward. Stephanie, I heard you speaking about wanting to see the line items. We do, as Donna pointed out, or Erica pointed out, we do only approve the departments. But we do, when we approve department budgets, we see the line items. So to your point, you want to see the line items of where the money goes to in each of those departments.
Yeah, like technically those, the amount wouldn't change. Like say election officials, that wouldn't change. It would just say two registrars or something like that, or, you know, registrar A and registrar B or something.
Or, well, their line item probably says registrar salary. And that's what their line item is. So you wouldn't.
Right.
Yeah. But I think a great example of that is Public Works. If that whole $22,695 went to one Public Works employee, then, you know, you wouldn't necessarily know that, but you would know the classes of employees. So that $22,695 might go to all one class of employees, or it might be spread across all the employees, and that we would see in the line items.
Mike,
Yes.
I'd like to have it broken down into 10 motions instead of one.
So for the 10 destinations.
Correct.
Okay. Any other comments on what we would need to carry this forward? Obviously, I'm not sure if we would cross over a selectmen's meeting in the meantime. So we would have action on that possible bonus, which is the third item mentioned above. But obviously, if that was clarified at that point, then that would be good information to have. And we could certainly call a special meeting for this so we don't run out the end of the fiscal year. Any other board comments? Donna and Erica, any questions for us on the going forward?
I don't have questions, but if I can make a comment, the amount of work that went into providing you this detail on Donna's end took a lot of time at the end of a fiscal year with some very significant employee turnover in her office. This is not atypical from how we normally handle procedures, and the amount of work that Donna's going to have to do now is incredible. And so I'm a little disappointed. You're going to get still only department level transfers, not line item transfers. So, and I'll let Donna speak to that, but this is going to add an incredible amount of work to Donna's already very packed workload.
Donna, do you want to comment on that?
I'm happy to do it for the Board of Finance.
Thank you.
It'd be a lot of work, but I'm, you know, happy to do it.
Thank you on that. I understand the concerns, Erica, and I'm sure it is extra work. Fortunately, I'm sure Donna already knows the numbers for the individuals. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to create the number that she knows she needs. So hopefully that part is not extreme. And I do apologize for the extra work. I think this is just the nature of the beast sometimes with us trying to make sure we're doing the right thing, making the prudent choices, and having the information. Any other board comments before we move on? Hang on, let me just, so Donna, those were all of the transfer documents you had sent to me, right? I'm looking back at emails right now.
Yes, you're right, Mike.
Okay, thank you. Okay, new business item 2, board financial policies. I think I'd like to stop at this point because we had tabled discussion on the ARPA update in anticipation of Christine joining us. If it's okay with the board, I'd like to come back now to the ARPA update process discussion.
Good idea.
Okay, Christina, just to give you an idea where we were, we went over your report, we put it up on the screen, read through your report, and then we moved on to the process discussion because we knew there was, we had done a quick overview of the fact that there was a question about how to approve bonuses when so many of the voting members of the committee would also receive bonuses. And there was a effort to make sure that was done, so there were ethical violations. And then as far as the rest of the discussion about like maxing out the budget, having now more requests than are in, and all this sort of other stuff about the process, we tabled all of that until you came.
Oh, great.
If you want to kind of get it started.
Okay, so yeah, so you're right, we have maxed out, like if we were to fund everything that has been requested for, we would be in the negative. Now, that's not to say that's what would happen anyway, because the process is to vet each item, and it really is like a first come first serve process. So now that we're getting down to the end, I think every dollar is gonna be looked at even more closely, because now we know I think we know the universe of requests now. I don't expect that there's going to be too many more. I haven't heard of any more that are going to be submitted, but yeah, so I don't know how the commission is going to feel about different things, and that's sort of what the process is to find that out. So we are having our next meeting on the 28th. Is that right?
27th, was it?
Yeah, the Monday, 27th. So that's another regular meeting. And the hope there is that some of the projects that were almost ready for a public hearing will be ready, meaning we have real numbers and real plans that we're actually talking about. And if that's the case, then we will have a pretty full agenda for the next public hearing that is being targeted for July 11th. And then when that happens, after that, the board can start making some appropriation decisions about those things that have gone through the public hearing process. So.
Okay, what other concerns do you have? I don't know if there's anything new on the issue of how to approve the bonuses. If I remember the discussion, it was basically the commission felt that all they were doing at that point was voting to send it to the taxpayers for the public hearing. So they didn't feel there was a challenge in the ethics. I think there was disagreement, polite disagreement amongst commission members about whether they should even vote on that. Some commission members felt they shouldn't even vote, and they abstained, I think, from the vote on that because they didn't want it perceived as a support of something they would benefit from financially. So I don't know if there's anything new on that.
There's a truck going by. Not officially. Basically, that's where we last left off in the public meeting is where we're at. Okay. I think some more research was going to go into the procedures and exactly how we should be doing it. I do think Erica talked to the town attorney and got an opinion on that. So what's going to happen next? It just depends on the board, really. So.
Okay. And then there's been some discussion about whether items have been seen before in capital requests or not, and does that give them any priority or lack of priority? I don't know that I sense there was any sort of decision or guidance on that. It's just sort of a talking point.
Well, so I can only speak for myself, and so I'm at the ARPA board representing the Board of Finance, and I happen to be CIP chair. So when I see a project that has been on the CIP plan, I'm inclined to support that because I understand how many years it takes to get things through. So that's my own personal opinion. Everyone else has their own opinion, so. But to
The
me,
only
that's
other-
important.
Right. The only other question I had is, you know, there was a lot of talk early on, especially with getting the ordinance passed, which I voted for, about the need to get money in, maybe emergency is a strong word, but quickly to get money into people's hands who were in need, whether it's individual citizens or businesses. We're quite a ways down the road, and do we know if any of that is happening yet? As I understand, for businesses, the application period is still open. So nothing's been dispersed yet, right?
Right, and that closes on June 30th. Or
Okay.
Yeah, I think after July 1st, they're gonna look at their universe of requests and see where they're at with it. And that's like a subcommittee, basically, of the, it's not a subcommittee of ARPA, it's a subcommittee of the EDC Commission, who is like now overseeing this pot of money.
Mhm.
So I know that they have received requests. I just don't know how many and what amount they're up to with that 300,000. So I'm
And then
anxious
how
to-
about for individuals, like through human services or anything like that? Are
So
it
there,
starting to get into the hands of individuals now?
there are a couple of projects that were approved. One was for fuel assistance, which I don't think anyone has made any requests yet for that. I don't know for sure, but it's usually a winter thing.
Right.
But, and then there was also some funds put aside for summer camp to make it, it's actually free for all kids this summer. As long as they're Wellington residents.
Or
And-
free for the first 50, maybe?
For the first 50, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, each week, 50 each week. And then after that, it's, I think they can't take more kids than that. So it's not that it's not free, it's just they're full.
Oh, they're full, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So but I don't know, and Erica might know more than me, like what else Human Services has, because I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately. But they do have ways of helping people. I just don't know exactly how.
I was just asking because I've had a couple people ask me, you know, with the need to get this program moving. And the early discussion about this is something that needs to help people in need. You know, were we meeting that goal to some extent? Because, you know, of course, we have varying different opinions throughout our, you know, social and political atmosphere here, our hemisphere. And, you know, people were concerned seeing about some of the big ticket items coming through. Were we also helping individuals? And so it looks like we're getting to the point where we're helping individuals.
Yes. Yes, and I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me to know for sure, but I mean, it still is not a streamlined, super streamlined process, because we are taking the step of having public hearings, and that, as you know, takes more time. So I don't know. In the end, if we saved time doing this, or saved aggravation doing this, probably from my opinion, from my perspective, no, because it's a lot of work. So,
That sounds like a chairman speaking.
yeah. But, because otherwise, if it had just gone through the normal process, it would be coming to this board, and this board would be deliberating about all of it, and it would be extra work for this board. So, who knows? But this is the path we're on. So,
Right. Other board members, questions, comments for Christina? Stephanie, you're muted.
I just wanted to ask about the 200,000, you know, if everything's approved that's on the table now, right?
mhm,
It'll be 200,000 in the red, so it's all not gonna get approved, correct?
correct.
Okay, so how is that affecting the projects that are still on the table or in play? Is that because it's not perfect math? I know it's sort of, if all these guys sort of push for quick approval, the things that may be coming from the library and the camera project are going to be, out of luck. But
Or,
I'm wondering, can you put that in context about how that all?
well, so up until this point in time, we didn't have this problem, because we didn't have the requests yet. And so there was enough money for months. Now I think the decisions can be to partially fund some of these projects or not fund some of them. Those decisions have to be made. And that's why public input is really important, because that board needs to hear what things people most want to support that's left on the list.
Any other board questions or comments for Christina? All right, thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
All right, back to the agenda here. Board financial policies. This is an outgrowth of the next item. I don't know if anyone's gonna have anything that they've thought of since the last meeting for item 3, but I just wanted to kind of put the bug in the ear of the board members that, again, during budget season, we talk about things that we'd like to do a little differently or ways we can do things better. And one of the discussions that came to me recently was understanding the differences between capital purchases, leases, and why leases don't go back through for approval versus a purchase has to go back through for approval. And then what is really the difference if it's a lease to purchase? Should that be looked at policy-wise as a lease, or should it be looked at policy-wise as a capital purchase and go back for approval? So again, there's not an action item on this. It's a discussion, and I really would like, before our next budget season, to have found a couple items that we can make better for the next budget season. So if anyone has anything they want to discuss on that, please feel free. Otherwise, we'll move on.
You're saying the lease perusal is one of the things you'd like to see.
Yeah, so I've had questions, and we've had people on the board in the past who don't happen to be on the board right now, who were kind of experts in understanding the legalities of this and why it was when you had a capital purchase in CIP, that was not a green light for the department to make the capital purchase after July 1. They actually had to come back through for approval to make the appropriation. Versus if it's a lease, they did not have to do that. And what really is the difference between the two? There certainly are some differences. For example, the lease payment is typically carried in the department budget. So when the townspeople approve the annual budget, they've approved that lease payment. That's one of the reasons that you don't have to go back to the townspeople to approve leasing. Let's say you're leasing, I don't know, the town's going to go back to owning their own school buses. If you're going to buy it as a capital expense, you have to go back after July 1 and ask the townspeople to approve purchasing it. But if you lease it, it's in your operating budget, you don't have to do that. However, if you're leasing to purchase, is it one or the other or a hybrid? And getting clarity on those things so that we don't have these debates every year. How do we do this? Who do we ask? Oh, Donna, what's the answer to that? Can we get clarity and improve our board manual basically so that we have a clearer path to answer these questions so that the next poor sucker doesn't spend 3 budget seasons learning it?
The thing that I think is confusing about it too is for long-term planning, like when you're sitting on CIP, it's you lose track of what is the actual outlay for vehicles as a whole, because and how many do we have for, by different departments or for
Sure.
different uses. Because leases, of course, an overall much larger sum paid in total over time than outright purchase. But that because they're handled in different bookkeeping ways, and as you just described with the operating budget, there's no way to really have a quick handle on how much of the CIP budget, for instance, is being used for vehicle purchase
Right.
altogether. So it's real hard to plan. And there are fairness issues, I think, that come in too, in terms of taking care of the town.
Right.
So to me, there should be some, I guess I'm just generally for more transparency in the way this works. So the other thing that I would say is an issue that I'd like to see, and I think I'm chalking this up mostly to COVID. We've been meeting online, so we've been getting everything by email, and it's definitely harder than it was when we were meeting in person and we had packets of information that were pertinent to every meeting, especially when we're meeting, weekly. It's just a lot to be getting at the last minute, trying to print out on our various technologies, and it's hard to read at the sort of reduced point size that you end up with. I just don't, and I think, and I would multiply that times 10 for the citizens of the town who want to watch the process. It's very hard for them because they may not be seeing all that information coming through, and they're hearing us talk about things that they're not really even able to visualize. So there's a big need there, and I really think I've mentioned it before, but part of the answer may be what's available online in terms of past budget from prior years, past budgets, so that people can have a comparison, and then just what we can post during the budget season that helps them. I don't know what the answer is, but I definitely think there might need to be a task force looking at that. And personally, I would, if we're going to be meeting more regularly, when we get these numbers in check on COVID infections, when we're going to be meeting more in person, I would really like to see us go back to full scale printouts like Donna used to do for us, packets that make us so that we all have a point of reference when we're discussing this in person.
Right. We also could consider setting deadlines. We've talked off and on a little bit about this, that, like all agenda items have to be submitted by noon on Monday or something like that, to give enough time to make the distribution. If it is, going to be distributed by email to board members, so there's enough time for them to see it, or there's enough time to get it on an agenda, and the agenda can get out a day or two sooner. So that we're giving people more notice to come to the meeting or attend the meeting. Yeah.
I think that would have helped us tonight in the transfer discussion, for instance. If we had it, say if that deadline for materials for a monthly meeting is at least the day before the meeting, then we could maybe ask for the detail at that point, and have a much quicker process at the actual monthly meeting. Just a thought.
Balance that with the fact that we're only supposed to be doing business in the meeting. So we just have to kind of make sure we are clear what are our various needs there. But getting the notice out sooner so that people have time to digest it and decide if they want to attend a meeting, like for the public, that would be really valuable. Yeah. Okay, anything, this is items 2 and 3. Anything else on either of these items? Okay, correspondence, you have it all. Some of it came right before the meeting, so check your emails. Present to speak, back to present to speak. Anybody out there? Wave your hand or unmute and call out your name. All right, good and welfare. I think it is excellent, the financial news that our revenue was higher than expected. That's always the surprise we want to get at the end of a fiscal year. And I do want to point out, particularly since we've added a bunch of work to Donna's plate, that as usual, her work is incredibly valuable to us and is appreciated. Especially when she's bringing us good news about increased revenue. That's all I have. Anyone else with good and welfare? Pete?
I'd like to move to adjourn.
I will second that. All those in favor, please say
Aye.
aye and wave goodbye.
Yes.
Thank you.